Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Thursday, September 26th. Today is day 356 since October 7th. If you are new to watching these videos, I've been doing them every day since the attacks by Hamas on the south of Israel. The purpose of them is to provide an update on the news of the last, roughly 24 hours, taken from various different sources, sources from the Arab world, Israeli news sources, sources from the US government and other governments, to try to get diverse perspectives, seeking to understand what's happening on the ground. The goal is to use them to understand, but also to use them to motivate us to pray and to act. Our goal is ultimately the de-escalation of conflict, a permanent ceasefire, peace in the Middle East for the sake of all peoples, to end the ongoing bombing of Gaza, which has killed tens of thousands of people, to bring hostages home who've been held for so long, to release prisoners who are being held unjustly, of which there are hundreds being held in Israeli prisons without trial, without charges. So the news from the last 24 hours, specifically from Lebanon, this was hot off the press several hours ago. It's now, I'm in South Korea still. It's now roughly 10 minutes to 8 p.m. in South Korea. So earlier today, my time, the US, France, and other nations called for a 21-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. The goal is to avert a wider conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. The statement comes as Israel's top military general has been telling soldiers to prepare for a possible incursion into Lebanon. President Biden has warned that an all-out Middle East war is possible, as Netanyahu has given the green light for truce talks to proceed, the Times of Israel reported, but Israel is deeply skeptical that the US-French effort would be successful in crafting a temporary ceasefire and in halting the escalating conflict. The US, France, and other allies not only called for this ceasefire, but they put out a joint statement that was released by the White House following an emergency UN Security Council meeting that France was one of the conveners of. Specifically, what's been happening in Lebanon and in Israel in terms of those hostilities, Israel was hitting Hezbollah with, quote, strikes it couldn't even have imagined, end quote. This comes from Haaretz. I think that was Netanyahu who said that. It was an Israeli official, that they would continue until residents of Israel's north could return home in safety. Hezbollah, for the first time ever, fired a surface-to-surface missile at Tel Aviv. It was reported that this is the first time ever that it was fired at this this is a new word for me, conuberation. Anyway, it means a number of metropolises, cities, large towns, and other urban areas, which have merged into like one large continuous urban growth. That's a good word. I should learn how to pronounce it. Anyway, Hezbollah fired a surface-to-surface missile. It was intercepted by David's Sling, which is an air defense system, intercepted the missile in the Sharon area, which is north of Tel Aviv. And forgive me, because that is absolutely no laughing matter. Hezbollah said the launch was aimed at the Mossad headquarters in response to Israel's assassination of the senior official and page explosions in Lebanon and Syria, which have been attributed to Israel. A Hezbollah official told Reuters that the attack on the members' pagers and other communication devices left 1,500 fighters out of commission. The National Security Council spokesperson in the US, John Kirby, called Hezbollah's missile launch deeply concerning. He added the evidence that Israel is facing a legitimate threat from a terrorist group backed by Iran. No nation should have to live with these threats right across their border, right next door. The IDF, in response to these escalations, has mobilized 2 brigades of reservists for operational missions in the north to protect Israeli citizens and to create, quote, the conditions for the safe return of residents. The IDF also struck 280 Hezbollah targets in Lebanon Wednesday. That was yesterday. This was including launch sites from which northern Israeli communities have been fired at. The vast consequences from the missiles that have been fired from Hezbollah into Israel has been fires. There has been damage of property. There have been some injuries and some deaths. And there have been numerous deaths. I mean, the death toll, of course, in Lebanon is in the hundreds at this point. Also, some 60 Hezbollah intelligence targets were hit, according to the IDF. Lebanon has said that Israel struck deep inside its country, including north of Beirut. 6 people were killed, 15 wounded in an Israeli strike in Beirut on Tuesday, Hezbollah confirmed. They also confirmed that their missile unit commander, his name's Ibrahim Kabaisi, was killed this week in that attack. The Israeli Electric Corporation said Hezbollah attempted to target a strategic facility, but would not confirm if any damage had occurred. The Speaker of Lebanon's parliament told a newspaper that he's investing great efforts to reach a diplomatic solution, and that the next 24 hours will be decisive. So it may very well be, and I pray that it is the case, by the time you watch this video, there have been updates. Because often with the time difference, it makes a big difference. The U.S. is spearheading a new diplomatic effort to end hostilities in both Gaza and Lebanon. And so we've talked about that. The significance of this that Haaretz is reporting is they said that they're linking the two conflicts as a single initiative. So 6 sources reported this to Reuters, adding that the details are being hammered out at the UN General Assembly, which, by the way, Netanyahu is on his way to. I think he's supposed to speak tomorrow. Speaking with NBC, Secretary of State Blinken said that the U.S. supports solving the problem of ensuring the safe return of Israelis to their home, adding that we believe the best way to solve it is through diplomacy and not war. More than 90,000 people have been displaced by 5 days of Israeli strikes on Lebanon, the UN has said. What's unclear to me, there were already, when I was in Lebanon in January, about 100,000 people that had been displaced from South Lebanon. And it's not clear to me if these are an additional 90,000 or if it's the same that had already been displaced 4 months. Iran's Supreme Leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, said that killing valuable members of Hezbollah will not bring it to its knees. And the Kremlin urged Russian nationals to leave Lebanon as soon as possible for their own safety on commercial flights. There are a few consequences of things escalating in Hezbollah, in Lebanon, not only what's happening specifically, but also there's been so much military attention being paid that there has been less bombing in Gaza. Also, the culture and sports minister, meeting with protesters who are calling for a hostage deal, had a meeting near his home, said that Israel will not return to being Israel if we do not return the hostages. It's clear to everyone they have to be returned home. He said cutting ties with the Hamas leader Sinwar will not help reach a deal. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken told CBS that closing a hostage ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas is a question of political will. In the first instance, the political will needs to be demonstrated by Hamas. We've not seen that in the past couple of weeks. Israel will have some hard decisions to make to bring this to a close, but we've got to see if Hamas is actually serious. Also related to Gaza, meetings at the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York, the foreign ministers of Iraq, Jordan, and Egypt accused Israel of pushing the region towards an all-out war, and they emphasized that stopping the escalation begins with halting the Israeli aggression on Gaza. The death toll in Gaza is now 41,495 people and at least 96,000 wounded. In Israel, Netanyahu, I mentioned, will fly to New York. That's supposed to happen today to address the UN Assembly tomorrow morning. He will return to Israel Saturday night. A few updates from Congress. I'll make these quick. Senator Bernie Sanders announced yesterday on X, "Today with my colleagues, I introduced legislation to block arms sales to Israel. Sending more weapons to Netanyahu's extremist government is immoral and illegal. U.S. weapons are responsible for far too many civilian casualties in Gaza. We must end our complicity in this atrocity." Finally, Jason Smith submitted a letter to the commissioner of the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, saying that he was referring American Muslims to Palestine, along with the subsidiary organization Students for Justice in Palestine, for investigation and ultimately revocation of their tax-exempt status. That's the 501c3 status, so they don't have to pay taxes as a nonprofit. And so Representative Smith, he's trying to have American Muslims for Palestine and a number of other Islamic organizations lose their tax-exempt status. And the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, tweeted to 8 different pro-Palestinian organizations, including those, saying Representative Jason Smith and the House GOP are putting you on notice. Your tax-exempt status should be revoked immediately. My understanding is that there's a process, but essentially it's an internal review process. The IRS has the ability to, the commissioner has the ability to be able to revoke statuses once it goes through this internal review process. So Mike Johnson said, we're putting you on notice. Your tax-exempt status should be revoked immediately. The 8 groups were mostly Muslim groups that included Islamic Relief, and they also included the Jewish group Jewish Voices for Peace. So I wanted to be sure to let you know about that happening. Continue in your efforts. Do not give up. Do not give up. May God go before us. In the name of Christ. Amen.